When all those series, like the rock and roll years and all those archive series came on telly, I said, what a brilliant idea to have a song of the period, and then you have a scene from a newsreel, and then a song of the period, because it's such an economical way of capturing a particular era. Well, Dad's Army started doing it in 1968.
Oh, Mr. Manning. Oh, you are a darling.
Arthur Lowe became more like Mannering, and Mannering became more like Arthur Lowe, and they were indistinguishable.
As De Niro is to the taxi driver character, as Clint Eastwood is to the man with no name, Arthur Lowe is to Mannering. It's just perfect.
I've forgotten the number. You stupid boy. It's Warmington-on-Sea. Just a moment. Wilson!
Yes.
Wilson!
Yes.
Just checking on the number.
Oh, yes. 333, sir.
Quite correct.
I think the acting is marvellous. Mannering does it nearly all by facial expression. The cameras just focus on him for a couple of seconds, and in that couple of seconds, his face, with just one muscle or so moving, says it all.
Mr. Mannering, you know what they say about bald-headed men?
No, what do they say?
And in the end, you can't help but kind of love Mannering. Even though I sort of sometimes think when he retired, he had an affair, perhaps in an unlikely event of having an affair, he gave birth to David Brent, who's now in the office. You know, it's the same kind of pompous, self-regarding idiot that everyone's secretly laughing at.
Look here. You show me yours, I'll show you mine.
My Brother and I, which is a longer than usual episode, a special, really shows Arthur Lowe at his best. It's a real pièce de résistance from him. He plays his twin brother, the black sheep, Barry.
Could you be in any way related to George Mannering, the bank manager?
Oh, boldface. Brother.
I was in My Brother and I, and it was the most wonderful episode because it gave Arthur the chance to do two parts, and the contrast between the very pompous, rather proper Captain Mannering and his rather dissolute brother is absolutely brilliant. And one thing Arthur always did brilliantly was a drunk scene.
I'm the branch manager. Oh. Nice for you. Put your hand in the till when you get a bit short, do you?
Arthur Lowe, I think, gives a performance from the beginning to the very end throughout the 9 years of Dad's Army, which is superb.
Damn revolving doors.
It's pitched perfectly, and it's executed superbly, and it's one of the great wry, compassionate, aware, witty performances in British television in any kind of genre.
Just keep walking. £7 a king Edward, sixpence.
We were very lucky about the authenticity because we were there, and we were that old, as it were. And I was an air raid warden, Jimmy was in the Home Guard, actually, and so we knew the background. There weren't any technical advisors floating about. We didn't have to have that. We knew the background very well.
Can't we go any faster, Jones?
We're doing 28 miles an hour. What do you want? Oh, that isn't. I'll run out of pennies.
Things like the great big wheel and the things spitting fire, they were actually real designs that they were going to come up with. All these people came up with these ideas and sent them to the War Office, and they investigated them. Jimmy unearthed all this when he was doing his research.
We had brown Windsor soup, we had well-meat cutlets, we had mashed potatoes, swedes, tapioca pudding and a cup of tea. 9pence. Mind you, it wasn't very good.
You do learn about the period. You certainly learn about the Home Guard. It is very accurate. It develops in that way. The delay in getting your arms and your armbands and your uniforms in the first series, for example, was pretty much how it happened.
Very smart, Corporal. What's that supposed to be, boy?
Well, you said if you had nothing else, we'd tie a carving knife to a broom handle.
I didn't say keep the brush on the end of it, you stupid boy.
Well, he should have stayed.
I don't want any insubordination.
Stories that come back from the Falklands of kit shortages, and then that was mirrored in the first Gulf, and then Afghanistan, and then the second. It just carries on. It's, you know, we're always inventing the wheel. I mean, you could make a modern day Dad's Army, and it would be you know, close to the truth.
Captain Merrin, I'd like to volunteer to be tortured, sir. I'd like to be the guinea pig, sir. I would like to suffer. I demand to suffer, sir. I demand to suffer, sir. Yeah, shut up!
You know he's going to be the first to volunteer. You know he's going to ask to get into these ridiculous situations. But it's still very convincing.
Don't worry about me, Mr. Manning. I'm as agile as a monkey. I'm as agile as a monkey.
See, the man's a fool.
Damn brave one.
What did you say, Jerry?
They don't like it up him, sir. They don't like it up him.
I had a good idea how to play that part. I mean, I'd played a lot of old men, but I was an old soldier. I mean, I'd been in the army for 7 years. I'd been a prisoner of war for 4 years. Old Corporal Jones always hated Hitler and did his best to be unpleasant about him. So from that point of view, it was a sort of revenge for me.
Come in. 20 miles is a long march, but if I can do it, so can you. Now, don't forget. Chests out, tins in, marching smartly to attack. It's the longest way up, 1. Shortest way down, 2. Quick! Ah! Right.
Although in some ways it was the British Army and it was the British Home Guard, it was particularly about England. It had an English heart and an English neurosis.
Okay. You know perfectly well that you can work here all day while I'm busy at the bank.
I'm sorry, Captain Mannering, but nothing is going to make me get up out of this chair, and that is that.
Sense of, I don't know, of rightness. A sense of patriotism, a sense of Britishness, really. Underneath it underlined it all. Despite all the mistakes, at heart, they felt they were in the right and doing the right thing.
Do you know, whilst I'm having my tea, I can feel the excitement mounting inside me. I put on my uniform and I march down here to the parade, and I feel a warm glow of pride in what we're doing, what we've achieved. We're doing something for England.
It's an utterly, utterly English programme. I mean, you cannot imagine a similar thing could be made about the Spanish Civil War with a load of bumbling peasants sort of falling over each other and someone going, oh, Franco doesn't like it up him, or something like that. I just...
The story of an empire in the past, that's Jones. Protestantism as part of our history, that's the Church Hall. A nation of shopkeepers, as Napoleon called us, that's the butcher, the undertaker, the bank manager. Yeah, that's the street in Wilmington-on-Sea. This is quintessentially English. It's as English as an out-of-season seaside resort on the south coast, as English as the Rock Emporium, as English as an essay by George Orwell about the British seaside postcard. It's about national identity and the cohesion of national identity under threat. That maybe we're terribly diffuse and dispersed, but the moment this external threat comes along, English national identity asserts itself. That, for me, is the heart of what the series is about. It's about us.
Thank God for Harry, England and St. John!
Comedy was there, and it was fresh, and it was alive, and it is why it works so well now.
I don't think this is something that is ever going to date. And the situations themselves are not dated. Incompetence, class tension, visual impact sometimes of the whole lot of these men trying to be efficient and completely failing. That sort of thing is timeless.
Dad's Army is there forever, or as almost a kind of archival comedy. I don't want to make it sound cobwebby, but it's a historical piece in itself. It stands still while we move, and it's now Grandad's Army.
Come on, gee up, come on.
The fight starts in half an hour. Don't panic, don't panic. He's doomed, doomed. That's the only language they understand, sir. You see, they don't like it up 'em, so they do not like it up.
When I first was told to say they don't like it up 'em, I thought it was terribly sort of rude. And I'd thought about it for a long time. I thought, well, this isn't really me. Then I thought, that old butcher, he would say that.
You do that again, you get this up you, and you will not like it.
We never wrote catchphrases as such. I think the public choose them, and then we exploit them. But don't panic was very much one.
Don't panic, don't panic. There's a mine under the pier.
We're doomed.
Don't be quiet, Fraser.
He said, oh, we're doomed. I said, keep that in. Doomed. Now everybody's going, doomed. And he said, all those kids going doomed. You're doomed, doomed.
You're doomed. You're all doomed.
These things have come up. Oh, I've said that so many times. I can't say it again. Stupid boy. I've said it 6 times this week already.
I've got a white mouse. How about that as the mascot?
Stupid boy.
Stupid boy was very useful, of course. It was said with such sincerity by Arthur, and he was so offended by it, with Pike, you know. It was really struck at his very heart, really.
If you have one catchphrase out of a sitcom, you consider yourself incredibly lucky. There's about 8 catchphrases that have got into the dictionaries from Dad's Army, and that's a sign it's got into the woodwork. I mean, we live it now.
I can possibly be excused.
Certainly not. State your post.
Turn, 10, shot! Hey, I don't. Who's supplying the money?
It has a sort of symphonic structure that over an average series of 6 or 8 episodes that running gags recur, and they're rather nicely distributed around the characters.
If you need anything like, razor blades, petrol coupons or elastic, let me know.
Why don't you have a word with the vicar, ask him to reduce his sermons and the length? They go on rather long, and sometimes it can be very inconvenient. Godfrey always wants to have a pee, and Private Walter's always got something interesting in his jacket, and Pike and his rather feeble constitution, he's had a scarf his mum's given him.
How many times have I told you not to wear that scarf on parade?
Yeah, well, Mum made me put it on, you see.
If he goes without his scarf, he gets croup.
My mum says I mustn't take it off, I get croup.
One never quite knew where Pike came from, as it were, with regard to the relationship between Mrs. Pike and Sergeant Wilson.
You look at that boy in certain lights, you know, there is a resemblance, same hairline. He has certain characteristics, like pulling the lobe of his ear.
The whole idea's outrageous. I mean to say, Mavis would have mentioned it.
John the Measurer used to have a little trick of going like that. So we wrote it in. He used to, like, this was a